Hey guys, it's Danny. Alrighty, today we're gonna have a setup explained type of video, and we're gonna talk about the layer of white pebbles that you see on most of the orchid pots that I have. This will be a video included in the description of every video from now onwards, because I do have a lot of new people, and the question of what's up with that pebble layer is quite often. So I'm gonna give you the gist of things, what it is, why I use it, and down below in the description of this video, I'm gonna give you some additional videos so you see what actually prompted me to use it. Let's start with what it is. Alrighty, so the layer is nothing more than actual pebbles. I'll give you a close-up of one. I don't know exactly what type of material it is. It's coming from a pet shop. It is actually designed to be used in freshwater aquariums. I have also tested it for calcium or other mineral content, and it doesn't seem to leach out anything in the water. I was actually looking for pebbles that would not have any mineral content, because that can influence the dosage of my fertilizer and maybe cause other problems. So for all intents and purposes, they are just some white pebbles that don't release anything into the pot. They're also smooth. The roots don't get any mechanical damage for it, and it comes from a pet shop. It is designed to sit in freshwater aquariums. You will see that I have various sizes. That only depends on the product that I had available at the moment I went to the pet shop. There's no logic behind it. Sometimes the pebbles were smaller, sometimes bigger. I was just forced to buy whatever I found at the time. Now, using pebbles with orchids is absolutely not mandatory, and I doubt you will probably see anybody else using them, because their purpose is very related to my setup, to how I grow my orchids, my conditions and environment. It is just a way for me to control certain aspects and phenomena that happen to me and my orchids. So now let's talk about why I use it. Now, if you don't already know, I am using inorganic medium with my orchids. It is made out of clay. I use both leca and ceramis, and I'll link you down below to a video in which I present these two materials. They have some benefits that work out great for me, some things that I'm looking for in my orchid setup. Pretty much they make my life easier. But like with any other type of medium, they have some drawbacks. One of which is accumulation of algae. Ceramis, being very water retentive, which is good for me, also has a drawback of promoting some algae deposits on the top of my pot, and that is quite unsightly. So one of its purposes is to eliminate the algae formation on the top, and these pebbles are not prone to accumulate algae. Yes, they are white, they reflect light, but they're very smooth, they retain zero water, so they actually do not promote any algae. Another reason why I'm using a top layer is to avoid root damage, and this is a little bit more important than the algae formation. The setup and medium that I am using is very beneficial in my conditions, in the sense that it is very porous and it retains quite a lot of water. However, when it gets very dry, it can start to do the reverse, actually suck up the water, and some orchids have pretty sensitive root tips. I did have some problems with some desiccated and damaged root tips, so I needed to find a solution to maintain either moisture at all times on the top layer, either a top layer that is not porous, not drying or desiccating in any way, since my issues were not inside the pot but right at the top. And since I cannot guarantee that I will always have time to wet the top layer, especially in my conditions, I chose to find a solution to completely change the top layer. As I was saying, these pebbles are very smooth. They retain literally no water, they absorb or retain no salts, and even if they're dry, they're not damaging to root tips. So from this point of view, they totally solved my issues with the damaged root tips at the top of the pots. Another reason why I chose to use them is layering. Like all media, when it starts to dry, my setup doesn't really dry all that equal. When compared to other media such as bark, it does definitely dry a lot more even, but still not enough. And because I was always prone to have a top layer a lot drier than a bottom layer, I needed to find something to make evaporation at the top even out with evaporation from inside the pot. So yet again, because this top layer is not porous, and also it blocks kind of the contact surface of air with ceramis and my medium, it tends to maintain moisture in the top layers as well. Due to the fact that I have ventilation holes, water still evaporates, but in much lesser quantities. Most of it is actually drank by the orchid. which is efficient and economical from many points of view, starting with water and ending with fertilizer. An outcome of using this top layer is a better use of fertilizer. Whenever the medium dries, whatever fertilizer is left will start to deposit and not be available for the orchid. If I can maintain most of the layers in my pot in a humid state, whatever fertilizer is found in those layers will be at all times available to my orchid. Furthermore, I will not have patches of dry roots and then some wet roots. Therefore, in my opinion, absorption is a lot more efficient. So I am being economical with fertilizer as well, and I am not wasting it. Furthermore, I don't really have that many buildups. Not at the top, because these pebbles really don't retain salts, but also because I maintain layers as evenly moist as possible, buildup is pretty minimal. In choosing the pebbles, I actually thought of plastic or other materials as well. So it's not that these pebbles are the best solution for my problems, it's just that they were the most available. They also have some drawbacks though. These pebbles are not light, they are quite heavy, and this makes my pots quite heavy as well, so I would rather use decorative containers, which have other purposes, that are made from plastic rather than ceramics. At the same time though, if my orchid has a root system, it is very well anchored, and the top layer actually maintains the root system in place so my orchid doesn't wobble as much. So I've been starting to use this pebble layer for quite a while right now, and I'm pretty happy with it. As you can see, it didn't get dirty, it didn't accumulate algae, it stayed pretty smooth, and I don't see accumulations of salts. Now, the idea of offering a top layer with specific effects is not new, and when I was growing my orchids in organic medium such as bark and maybe sphagnum moss, I pretty much always used a sphagnum moss layer because it did indeed retain more water and it made layering a lot less dramatic. The drawback of sphagnum is that it does degrade, it does accumulate some algae if it's too wet. On the other hand though, it does provide quite a lot of moisture at the top, and that's not always a bad thing. So overall, the idea of the pebble layer is just something that applies to me, and it came as a sort of solution for particular problems that I have. In other environments, the top layer made of pebbles can seriously restrict air circulation in the pot, especially if you don't have ventilation holes. An environment that is rather cool and rather humid absolutely does not benefit from this type of layer. However, in my climate and with my medium, it absolutely works and makes sense. But pretty much that's the only reason why I use it. As it just so happens, it kind of looks good and it also reflects light. And that's always a good thing with orchids. But does everybody need a top layer of pebbles? Absolutely not. And in some cases, it might actually be damaging. If you don't have the issues that I just talked about, you can absolutely forget about the pebble layer because it actually has no benefits. It doesn't feed the orchid in any way, it doesn't retain water, it's pretty heavy, so it's not actually a medium, an alternative medium for orchids. So if you ever wondered why I use the top layer of pebbles, what it is and what benefits it has, well, there you go, now you know. And if you wondered if you should use a pebble layer, I seriously doubt it. I have a suspicion. If you think it can help, if you have multiple issues similar to what I just told you, it might actually be worth an experiment. But other than that, it really doesn't do any type of good to the orchids. It just makes my setup run properly. Alrighty, this was the topic for today. I'm gonna include this video always in the description, so feel free to always check it out, scroll down, because I always offer multiple links to my setup or to frequent questions. And I hope this was useful. You know the drill. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, a share would be wonderful. And if you like to watch other orchid videos from me on a regular basis, simply subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. And with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye! Today my plastic pots have arrived and I cannot wait to get them from the post office because for the past 2 weeks I had to keep these orchids in a container. In a container that could contain their roots, and I had to soak them every day. It's not very pleasant now that I'm spoiled with some microfiber. but yeah, things will be resolved pretty soon. I cannot wait.